Hey guys, it's Ernesto. Welcome back to Hey guys, it's Ernesto. Welcome back to another Monday critique. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Monday. I'm having a wonderful Monday. I just want to get some quick housekeeping things out of the way. The first thing, my mic. Historically, I have been recording in mono. I have no idea why I've been recording in mono, but that's what I've been recording in. However, going forward, you should be hearing me in stereo. So what that means is, before, Max pointed it out to me on the last video that I put out, the last Monday critique video, before you guys were hearing me on one speaker. So going forward, you should be hearing me on two speakers. And if you do not, guys, please let me know and I'll go and look into what I can do to fix it. Because I'm not an audio guy, but I've been trying to make sure that the production values on these videos are going up. So obviously hearing me on one speaker is not a good thing. So you want to be hearing it on two different speakers. So hopefully that's fixed. So the next thing I want to talk about is about the retouching tutorial that I released last week. There is a discount in place, a 15% discount that I put in place. That discount expires at the end of this month. So if you guys haven't picked up the retouching tutorial yet, this is a great chance to pick that up and help support the channel. Guys, I really appreciate everyone that purchased the tutorial thus far. And if you haven't, you have until the end of the month to get 15% discount off of that tutorial. Again, I sincerely appreciate all your help and your support. With that said, we have two fantastic images to review today. And after this intro, we're gonna get straight into it. If you guys want to submit your image to be critiqued, please join our Facebook group. It's called Fine Art Photography and Modeling. In that group, I created a specific thread where you could submit your images to be critiqued. Hey guys, welcome back. So we're gonna get straight into the first image. So this image was submitted by this gentleman. Thank you very much, Tim, for submitting your image. Let's jump straight into it. All right, so the very first thing I always like to start out with is light. So when looking at this image and trying to analyze it, I always try to find the direction of light, not only in this image, but in any image. And in this image, the direction of light appeared to be coming from camera left. So Tim, you did a fantastic job in isolating that light and putting a direction to it. If you use natural light, great job at manipulating that light. I don't know if you use natural light or strobe in this particular shot, but if you use natural light, awesome job of manipulating that. So if you look at this image a little bit closer, you'll notice that she also has some wonderful catch lights in her eyes. And you know I'm a big fan of catch lights, so great job with that, Tim. Look, I can't really complain too much about what's going on or critique much what's going on with the lighting in this image, because quite frankly, I find the light in this image pretty awesome. So with that said, I'm just gonna move on. Great job. All right, guys, so now let's get into the posing in this image. So from a posing perspective, look, you did a great job in having the subject fill the frame greatly, or fill that environment basically greatly, by producing that wonderful big pose. The only couple of things that I would say with respect to the pose to help enhance it is this. So if you look at her left hand, right, you did a great job in bending her wrist, or having her bend her wrist. That is awesome. The other thing that you needed to do is have her bend her elbow just a little bit. Right now, it's just a little bit too straight, and you don't want to have straight limbs, especially if the limb could bend, you need to bend it. So that's what I would suggest in this particular shot. The other thing that I would suggest is that her body is just a little bit too straight. So what I would like to see in this image is just a little bit more shape to her. So one of the things I would suggest in order to help with that is, first thing, bending one of her knees. Point her feet towards the camera and have her bend her knees. And that would add just a little bit of an S-curve to her frame, and that would give her a nice little shape. Now, When I look at the image, I do see that that's what you attempted to do with the left leg, which is what I would have chose as well. Her left leg, since her right hand is up, I would have tried to bend her left knee. So because she's wearing this dress, what you needed to do is have her exaggerate that bend just a little bit more so you could see that bend. So you need to exaggerate the movement of that knee. If you had to elevate it up so you could push through that dress a little bit more so you could see it, or if you even have to tighten up the dress in the back just so you could have more shape to her, I would have done that. So those are the couple of things that I would have done from a posing perspective to help give her more shape and add a little bit more elegance to her hands. So overall, I think with respect to the pose and filling this frame and filling that environment, but I think you did a wonderful job, and I'll move on from there. All right, guys, so now let's talk about the composition in this image. So from a compositional perspective, man, you really knocked it out of the park with this one, because you basically took that environment, that tree that basically wrapped around her nicely and framed her nicely. I would have done it the same way. I'm sure a lot of other photographers would have done it the same way. You did an awesome job in capturing that environment, and I can't really suggest anything more to change it because you basically nailed it. So with that said, I will simply move on. Now let's move on to the post-production. So from a post-production perspective, there's a couple of things that I think you could have done to push this image just a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do, as opposed to talking about it, I'm just gonna show you exactly what I mean by pushing this image a little bit more. So let's take it back to the computer and I'll show you what I mean. All right, guys, so here we are on the computer. So let me show you exactly what I mean by trying to push this image a little bit more with respect to the post-production. So obviously this is the before image. This is the image that Tim created. This is his final product. So what I did was, all I did was just add a little bit of color work to this image. So here's what I did. So this is my post-production work to this image. So this is after, and this is before. So after, before. So now let's talk about exactly what I did in this image to push it to this level, okay? So let's take off all of what I did, and then we'll go through each one, right, and talk about it. Okay, so I'm not gonna go through a full-blown tutorial and telling you exactly how I did it, what I did. I'm just gonna give you a general idea of what I did, and if you guys know Photoshop, I'm sure you'll be able to figure out most of it. But here we go. Now, the first thing I did was add a curve adjustment layer to this image. And the curve adjustment layer that I added was simply to add a little bit more contrast to the image. And the first thing I do with that layer is I automatically convert that layer to luminosity. So I change it from normal to luminosity. So I'm gonna turn it on here. So you could see this is the before, after, before, after. Now you could see that I reduced the opacity level on this layer just a little bit, because every time that I do an adjustment, I always push it back a little bit just because, you know, my eyes sometimes play tricks on me. So I always push it back just a little bit because it could be a little bit too much. So if you're not seeing the effect on the screen, maybe I need to push it a little bit more so you guys can see it, but trust me, I see it in the image. You just want just a little hint of an adjustment. You don't want too much, it will be overpowering. So every time you do some kind of an adjustment to an image, always try to push it back just a little bit more so that is not overpowering the image, okay? So that's the very first thing that I did. All right, so the very next thing that I do in an image is also add a vignette. Now, most of my images all have vignettes. Now, you would never notice it because the vignettes are very, very subtle. So in this image, I added that vignette. I don't know if you guys could see it on the screen, but this is with the vignette, without the vignette. With the vignette, without. It's very subtle. Then I also added some light to her face. I felt that she just needed a little bit more punch of light in her face since I added that vignette. So I added a punch of light to her face, just a little bit, very subtle. So this is with it, this is without the light. With it, without, okay? The next thing I did was added a little bit of blues into the shadow area and yellows into the highlight area. Again, all just using curves so far. All we're using is curves so far. Okay, so this is with the blues and yellows. Again, very, very subtle. Without it, with it. I don't know if you guys can see this on the screen, but I could see it here. It's supposed to be very subtle. It is not supposed to be very drastic, okay? So this is, again, this is without it, this is with it. The next thing I did was added a levels layer. And on that layer, this particular purpose of this layer is, I know it's contradictory, but I reduce the contrast levels in the image just a little bit because I'm gonna do another step, which I'm gonna talk about, and that other step is just gonna add too much contrast to the image. So this particular layer just prepares for the next step that I need to take. So in this step, I added this layer to reduce that contrast. So this is with the contrast reduced, without it. With it, without it. So I'm gonna turn it on. Then the next thing I add is just a gradient map, right? And the gradient map, that is the step that I was preparing for by reducing the contrast, because when you add the gradient map adds a whole bunch of contrast to your image. So you just want to reduce that contrast, and to help with that, that's why you basically add that reduction layer below, which is reducing the contrast. So this is with it, without it. With it, without it, okay? So I'm gonna turn it on. Then, so lastly, I added this, I don't know why I added this, but I guess I just added it for fun. But this particular layer that I added was another curve layer, and all I did was try to add some little bit of sun flare here. Not sure how successful I was with that, but I was just playing around. I don't think it's really relevant to the image anyways, but here it is. It's very subtle. Everything that I do is try to be very subtle with it. So those are all the things that I did in this image, and I think if you'd have pushed the image just a little bit more, you would have get it to this level, or even better. I mean, I only took about like 5 minutes playing around with this stuff in here, but I'm sure if you concentrate a little bit more on this image, you could basically take it to another level and, you know, make it even better, because I think you have a wonderful, wonderful base to start on, and you could take that image so much further than where it is. I mean, if I had to spend a couple of more times on this, you know, I'll do some dodging and burning on this image to help push it to help push it a little bit more. But, you know, like I said, just spend some time on it, and I'm sure you'll get there. So let's take a quick full view of that image. Actually, let me just reduce that just a little bit. There you go. So that is my interpretation of this image from a post-production perspective. If you guys have any questions about what you just saw, or Tim, if you have any questions about that, please drop your comments down below and I'll be sure to get back to it. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. Let's move on to the next image. All right, guys, let's move on to image number 2. So this image was submitted by this gentleman. Thank you very much for submitting your image. Let's jump straight into it. So the first thing that I like to start with is light. Light is always important. So in this image, the image creator basically used window light, which is the most wonderful source of light that I love to use. So the light appears to be coming, or the main light appears to be coming from camera right. So the only issue that I have with the light source coming from camera right and your position to the subject is that the light is broad lighting the subject, right? So I think if you to move your camera position maybe a little bit more towards the left, that would help you create an image where you would be shooting her more on the shadow side of the face. That would have helped chisel out her face a little bit more. But I think with this particular subject, you could forgive the broad lighting because it's not really overpowering the shot that much. So I think for this particular shot and for this particular subject and the way the light is hitting her, I think it's fine. But as a rule of thumb, you just don't want to broad light female subjects. If you have to and you're in a pinch, go for it. But for the most part, you don't want to broad light a female subject. So you also have to pay attention to female subjects' face or any subject's face to figure out what type of light source would work for that person's face. Some faces are maybe a little bit too round and you probably don't want to, emphasize that. You may want to chisel it a little bit more, and, by shooting on the shadow side of the face will help that. So that's the only thing I would say pay attention to with respect to the light direction and a female subject's face. The other thing that I noticed with respect to this image is that the exposure on the subject is maybe a stop or two over. So the only thing there is just drop the exposure a little bit, or even in post, just try to bring down that exposure. And I think from that perspective, it would be fine. So those are the only two things that I had to say about the light in this image. Other than that, I think you did an awesome job. All right, guys, so now let's move on to the pose in this image. So from a posing perspective, again, we're dealing with a head as a headshot, but in this image, I think the subject connected really, really well with the camera. That eye connection to the camera just basically drills into, my soul when I'm looking at this image. Like, we really, really connect. So awesome job there with connecting the subject to the camera and the subject to the viewer, because when I'm looking at this image, I'm really, really intrigued and connected with the subject. So awesome job with that. Now, the only thing I would say with respect to the posing is her hand position. It is, after all, a headshot, and given that it's a headshot, that hand just poking out from the bottom just is a little bit distracting. So the only thing I would say there is perhaps from a compositional perspective, I would have cropped that shot just a little bit more, just to help just emphasize the focus on the subject's face. And that's it. That's all I would say with respect to the pose. Overall, I think it's fine. So now let's talk about the composition in this image. So I kind of hinted towards this in the posing section that I was talking about, which is the composition of the hands. I think if you were to come in closer on that shot, it would have removed that distraction with the hands from the shot, or you could just simply ask the subject to, pull her hands down so it's not in the shot. So from a compositional perspective, that's the only thing I would say with respect to this shot, which can be easily fixed. And I don't basically say this too often, but you could fix this in post, which is crop it, fix it in post, get rid of that hand. But I would say next time you take this shot, look at the sides of your frame, see what's included in those four corners of your frame, and then make a judgment call. What do you want to be in it and what do you want to exclude from it? If you're seeing something poking out and it's a little bit distracting, get rid of it or fix it. So that's the only thing I would say with respect to the composition in this shot, is that her hands is a little bit distracting. But overall, the composition that you have here is spot on. All right, guys, so now let's talk about the post-production in this image. So as opposed to just talking about it, let me show you what I mean, because I think in this image as well as the last image, I think a visual of what I'm trying to say would help as opposed to me just talking about it. So let's go to the computer and figure it out. So all right guys, here we are in Photoshop. So this is the original image that was submitted by the image creator. Now in this image, the one thing I mentioned in the lighting section is that this image may be, like, from a lighting perspective, 1 or 2 stops overexposed. So the other thing about this image with respect to the post-production is that I think that we could push this image a little bit further. Now, when I look at this image, I feel like this image is more like a timely piece. I feel like it's a piece that could live on. It's non-descriptive. It's like, you know, a piece that, you know, this young lady's, you know, kids, grandkids, whatever, will look back upon and just fall in love with. I just feel like this particular portrait is a very, very timely portrait, and I edited it in that fashion. So again, this is the image creator's final product. This is his shot, right? And then this is exactly what I did to the shot. So this is what I did to it. So I basically created the image into a black and white image. And I really, really love how this image looked in black and white, because it just emphasizes that timeless feel to the image when I look at it, okay? So that's just my interpretation. Whenever any artists look at anything, they interpret it in their own way, and this is my interpretation, okay? So let's talk about exactly what I did in this image, and we could go from there. All right, so let's dig into this. So there's a couple of layers. I'm gonna turn off all of these layers, and let's talk about exactly what I did, okay? All right, guys, so now let's take a look at these layers that we have in this image. Now, like I said in the previous image, I always start out with a contrast layer. And the reason I start out with a contrast layer when I'm working with the finishing touches of an image, which is basically the color work in an image, I start out with that contrast layer just to give a little bit of punch to the image. Now, since I already had a vision in mind for this particular image, I really, really wanted to push the contrast in this image just a little bit more, because I wanted it to be black and white, and the black and white with adding that bit of contrast would help, okay? So that is the contrast to this image. So this is with it. And I'm not really sure, again, how this is being translated on video, but I'm hoping that you guys could see the after effect to this image. So again, this is with it, this is without it, and this is with it, okay? So another thing that you will notice is that I changed the luminosity. I didn't really need to change it to luminosity because I had the goal of converting this into black and white, but you know, it's just basically my habit. I just turned it into luminosity, but you didn't really need to turn it into luminosity. Now, another thing, I left it at 100% because I wanted it, again, I wanted that punchy feeling. I didn't reduce my opacity because I wanted to have that little bit of a punch to it, okay? The next thing that I did was, going back to the lighting, I said that this image was a little bit overexposed, maybe 1 or 2 stops, so I reduced the exposure. This is with the reduction, and this is without it. So you guys could see that the image, now you could see a little bit more of the young lady's skin and her freckles and all that good stuff, is because when you had it like this, which was a little bit overexposed, you can't really see it. But if you pull back that exposure just a little bit, now you'll be able to see some of those freckles. So that's what I was talking about with respect to it being overexposed, you know, maybe 1 or 2 stops. Okay, now the next thing I did was, again, normal habit, probably didn't need to do this, but I did it anyways. And that was reduce the contrast just a little bit in the image, because I know the next step that I'm gonna add, which is the gradient level, and that gradient level I know is gonna add contrast to it. But again, like I said, probably I didn't need to do this, but I did it regardless, which is reduce the contrast. So the next bit here is the gradient level. So this is with it and without it. With, without. So let's take a quick look at this image. Oops. Okay. So this is a very, very, very timeless piece whenever I look at this image. So look, man, you did an awesome job with this image. Even the image that you submitted is pretty awesome. I mean, I love the black and white feel to this image. Oh, you know, actually, there's one thing that I forgot to do to this image, which is crop it. So let's do a quick crop on this image, because I did say you could probably crop it in post, right? So let's crop this a little bit. Let's crop it because I want to get rid of that hand, okay? So I think right about there is good. Okay, wonderful. All right, so now let's expand that a little bit more. So there you go. Very nice. I like that. All right, so I hope you guys enjoy that. So now we're gonna move on to the rating of these two images. Light. This image received a rating of 5. Pose. This image received a rating of 3. Composition. This image received a rating of 5. Post-production. This image received a rating of 3. Overall, this image received a rating of 4 out of 5. All right, so let's move on to the rating of image number 2. Light. This image received a rating of 4. Pose. This image received a rating of 3. Composition. This image received a rating of 4. Post-production. This image received a rating of 3. Overall, this image received a rating of 3.5 out of 5. All right, so I want to thank the image creators for submitting your images. Thank you guys very much for submitting your images. I sincerely appreciate it. I hope you guys got a lot of information from this critique. I hope it was helpful. I hope you guys could apply some of these tips and tricks to your next photo shoot. And I hope all the viewers could do the same as well. Guys, if you have any comments, drop it down below. Let me know if I missed anything about these critiques, or if you want to add anything to what I already said. That will be helpful not only to me, but also to the image creators. Guys, just a quick reminder, we do have that promotional sale for the retouching tutorial that was released last week. That sale ends at the end of this month. You will get 15% off if you enter the promotional code MC. I'll put that code on the screen. And if you guys want that 15% off, just enter that code and you're good to go. Again, guys, thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for everyone that purchased the tutorial thus far. I sincerely appreciate it. I hope it was helpful to everyone. And guys, just a quick reminder, if you read the description below that tutorial video, you will notice there's some instructions there to obtain the source files. So read those instructions, follow those instructions, and you will get access to the source files so you can follow along with the retouching tutorial. Again, thank you very much. That is it. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with your friends and family. And please put some feedback down below and let me know what you think about this video. And guys, if you got this far in the video, you must be enjoying this content and you must be enjoying this channel. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next Monday.